It is conference championship week in college football, and we are back for another short little episode making our guesses for conference championship weekend. And we got some games starting here this weekend. Conference will be crowning their champions. So please welcome back on the computer screen, Mr. Jack MacArthur.
What's going on, Jackson? Thanks for having me back on. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Jack. Well, we got some conference championship games to run down, so let's get right to it. Starting on Friday, we have Conference USA. That'll be at 4 o'clock on CBS Sports Network from Jacksonville. And that will be Western Kentucky taking on Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State is favored by 4. The over-under in that game is 57.5. I have not really watched much Conference USA this season, but I'm going to roll with the favorite here, Jacksonville State. I think they're going to cover the 4-point spread. I think they had a couple of major wins, and what I mean by that is they won by a whole lot of points. So they're known for scoring a lot of points. I'm going to take them -4. I'm going to take the over 57.5. I think this is going to be a high-scoring championship.
Okay, I'll take the favorite, and I'll say Jacksonville State covers, but it's going to be the under hits. So I'll say it's a relatively low-scoring game. I'll say Jacksonville State wins 24-17.
Just make a note here, jotting it down here. All right, next up is the American Athletic Championship. It is the Tulane Green Wave taking on Army. Tulane favored by 5. Over-under in that game is 45.5. That one is at 5 o'clock Friday on ABC. Army is ranked 24th in the nation. Tulane not ranked, but they are favored. Army, they had a hot start to their season. Give me Army in this one. I'm going to take the underdog. I'm going to say Army wins this game outright, not only covers, but beats Tulane. But I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I have the under 45.5.
Okay, I'm going to stick with you on Army. I got Army winning this one by 14, and I think that the over's going to hit here. So I'm agreeing with you on the team that's going to be victorious, potentially. I just don't agree with the takes on the over and under. So we'll go Tulane loses, Army takes the dub by 14 points, final score. Let's go 34. Let's go 37-23.
So you got the over in that game.
37-23.
All right, next up we got the Mountain West Friday night, 5 o'clock on Fox. That is going to be UNLV taking on Boise State.
Going to be a good one.
From the blue turf in Boise, Idaho. And taking a quick look at Boise State, again, they only have one loss. They're in the college football playoff right now as the number 4 seed with that last bye. Of course, a win for them means they stay pretty much right there. They would probably get the bye. They would stay in the field, and then they would have, a game a week later against probably like a Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, like one of those teams. But for now, Boise State's going to win. They're only favored by 4. I'm shocked they're not favored by more in this game. I'm going to take the Broncos in this one with the over-under being 58.5. UNLV can score too. This is going to be high scoring. Do I think it's going to be high scoring in the championship game, though? That is very interesting to look at right now. Again, Boise State's only loss this season, Jack, is to your Ducks. So they stay right at 12-1. In that mix with the bye, like I said earlier. Give me the Broncos and give me the over in this game. Both teams are going to score a lot of points.
All right. Well, I had to do it to you. You know what I'm picking? I'm picking, even they lost to this team right here, but I got to stick with the Broncos. They got the home field advantage. Ashton GT's had a phenomenal season. He should win the Heisman if it's not rigged. So I'll say Broncos win this one by 10, and the over is going to hit. I'll say Broncos win by 10. Final score, let's go 34. Let's go 37-20. Let's go 37-27. Broncos win by 10.
All right, they stay in that mix for the college football playoff race with a key win. And even if they lose, some people think they might drop out of the race entirely. I don't really think that's the case. I think they would probably stay in that 12-team field. But definitely a win is going to be important for Boise State on Friday. Again, that one 5 o'clock on Fox. All right, Saturday, switching gears to the big day of conference championships and the first of the Power Four. It is going to be the Big 12. That one's going to be the early one, 9 a.m. on ABC. That one's going to be the Iowa State Cyclones taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils from Arlington, Texas. Arizona State right now holds as a 2-point favorite. The over-under in that game is 50.5. I look back to that game Arizona State had this year against BYU that came down to the wire. Arizona State, they, of course, taking a look here at...
They dominated Arizona.
Yeah, taking a look at who they played. They are 10-2. They lost to Texas Tech. And then their other loss came against Cincinnati. So 2 losses that, you might think they shouldn't have had, but still being at 10-2 right now, they are the 2-point favorite against Iowa State. And taking a look at the Cyclones here, we got Iowa State with a record, if it'll let me click this one here. Iowa State is also 10-2. Again, they are tied atop the Big 12. Iowa State's only losses so far this season came back-to-back when they lost to Texas Tech and then they lost to Kansas. Kansas actually has beaten quite a bit of good teams this year. Unfortunately for the Jayhawks, they will miss out on any chance at a conference championship or even a college football playoff berth, but they just had a remarkable season. They have not played Iowa State and Arizona State in the regular season. So this will be the first matchup between the two. Sun Devils, of course, their first year in the Big 12. I'm going to take Arizona State. I think they're going to make a statement here. Coming to the Big 12, they're going to defeat the Cyclones. They are favored by 2, so give me Sun Devils minus the 2, the over-under 50.5. This is going to be a low-scoring affair. I'm going to take the under on this one.
Wow, really? Okay, that's an interesting take because you could look this one up, but if I'm not mistaken, Arizona State crushed Arizona like 50-something to 13? What was the final score of that game?
I am looking at that for you right now here.
But either way, I'll take Arizona State to cover, and I'll take the over. I think the final score of this game is going to be something like 34-24. It's going to be close. Even 34-31. I'll say 34-24. It's going to be like a relatively medium to high scoring game.
But you still have Arizona State minus the 2, is that correct?
I got Arizona State winning it by 10. I think I said by 10. Or no, actually by 8. So 31-24.
49-7, by the way, was the final score of that Arizona and Arizona State
I think
game.
Arizona State's going to make a statement, like you said. I'll say they win 34-24.
And they are very close in the rankings. Iowa
37.
State right now at 16, Arizona State at 15. So they are right next to each other. So Jack has Arizona State and the over.
Yeah.
So far, we've kind of we've agreed so far on all of our picks team-wise, but we've kind of flipped back and forth on whether we have the over or the under. But so far, you have 3 overs so far of the first 4 games that we picked, only 1 under, and I have 2 and 2. All right, next conference championship up will be from Ford Field in Detroit. It is the MAC championship game, and it is Ohio, the Bobcats. They are going to be taking on Miami of Ohio. And that one will kick off at 9 a.m. as well on ESPN. The Miami of Ohio is favored in that game. They are only favored by 1.5. The over-under in that game is 44.5. Of course, I have not really tuned into much Maction this season, but I know Ohio was one of those teams to look for. But Miami of Ohio, I know, has been good in recent years. I'm going to take Miami of Ohio minus the 1.5 here. And I also think this is going to be a low-scoring affair. Give me the under in this game.
All right, I'm going to actually agree with you on both sides here. It's a surprise. But no, I'll take Miami of Ohio. They win this game by 7 points. I think it's going to be relatively close. I haven't watched much MAC action this year either, but I know those teams, so I'll take Miami of Ohio. They're going to win this one. What was the over-under, 44.5?
Over-under in this game is 44.5. That is correct.
Okay. I'll say the under hits. I think the final score will be something like 21-14. Miami of Ohio wins.
All right. Next up, we have the SWAC championship game against that'll be Southern and Jackson State. There is no line in that game, as well as no over-under. So for this one, we will just pick whoever we believe will win. That one will kick off at 11 a.m. on ESPN2. Give me the home team. I'm going to take Jackson State.
Okay, I'll take Jackson State. I think they'll win something like 28-24. I think it'll be really close.
I know that I was kind of going back and looking at a couple of their games, and I think they had like an average win margin of like 13. So they've been relatively good this year. So I'm going to take Jackson State, just like you. We both have Jackson State, so that one will kind of be a wash since it'll just cancel each other out. We have the same pick. All right. Now I would argue this might be the biggest game of the day. It is the SEC Championship down in Atlanta, 1 o'clock on ABC. First SEC Championship appearance for new member Texas, the Longhorns. They are favored by just 2.5, so less than a field goal, Jack, against the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, Georgia with 2 losses on the year. They haven't won the college football playoff in a couple of years, of course, with Michigan winning it last year. They sit right here in the college football playoff as the 7th seed, it looks like, take a look at the playoff. So right now, as it stands, taking a look at the college football playoff bracket, I believe they were going to be playing Indiana, but I need to make sure on that one. So taking a look at the bracket, and indeed they are the 7th seed. So if the playoffs started now, Georgia and Indiana would play in Athens. But it's going to be the Bulldogs taking on the Longhorns. Give me Georgia in this one. I don't think Texas. I mean, of course, you remember they played earlier in the season. Georgia beat them down in Austin. So Texas obviously going to be looking for a little bit of revenge, but you got to remember that game, Jack. Georgia not only won, but they won handily. They doubled them up. 30-15 was the final of that game. The Bulldogs looked really strong. Kirby Smart had a strong message after the game, speaking with Holly Rowe of ESPN and ABC, saying that everyone doubted them in that game, but here they were, and they won that game. Of course, their losses came against Arkansas and Alabama. So I'm taking the Bulldogs. The over-under in this game is 49.5. I do believe these two teams are going to play it tight. I think it's going to be really close to that over-under point. Of course, if you have a game that's like 31-28, that's a total of 59 points, so that's definitely over. But like if you had a game that's like 27-21, that's 48. So I think whatever result of that game from the SEC Championship, it's going to hover right around that 49.5 point threshold at the over/under. I do believe it's going to be just a little bit over. So give me the Georgia Bulldogs and give me the over.
Okay, and what's the line? Who's favored?
Texas is favored by 2.5.
Okay, I'm going to take Georgia, and I think Georgia is going to win by at least 7. I think that it'll be a really relatively close game, but I just think that as you mentioned, Georgia crushed Texas last time they played. You got to trust Georgia's defense. Kirby Smart's a excellent coach. He's experienced. He's been here before. I think you got to take Georgia. I mean, obviously Texas, they have a great offense, but in this situation, Georgia's got a solid run game. They got a good defense. Their offense is okay overall. But I'll take Georgia. I'll say final score. Let's go 38 to 20 or 38 to 28. Georgia wins by 10.
All right, next up, the last of the lesser-known conferences. No offense to them, they play hard as well, but it is the Sun Belt Championship. Marshall taking on Louisiana in Lafayette, and that one will kick off at 4:30 on Saturday on ESPN. By the way, all the times I've been listing are Pacific time because we're both in the Pacific time zone. But Marshall against Louisiana. Louisiana is favored in that one by 5.5. Louisiana is the Raging Cajuns, I believe, right?
Sounds right. Could be wrong, though.
And then Marshall, I don't know what Marshall's mascot is. Look it up real quick. Here we go.
Hassan Whiteside went to Marshall. That's what I know. Former Blazer.
They are the Thundering Herd. Okay. So the Marshall Thundering Herd, and I'm just going to make sure I have Louisiana right. Let's see. Yep, Raging Cajuns. So I had that one right. So the Thundering Herd against the Raging Cajuns. Give me Louisiana minus the 5.5. Over under 56.5. The only game I remember from Marshall is when they played Notre Dame. I remember that one was relatively low scoring, so I'm going to take the under in this one.
All right, I'll take Marshall, and I also have to hammer the under here if I was to bet on this, which I'm not going to. But I'll take Marshall. I'll say Marshall wins this one by 10. Final score. Let's go 20. What was the over-under again? 60-something?
It was 56.5.
Jeez, that's a massive margin. I'll say the over. Or I'll say that Marshall wins by 10. Final score. We'll say 31-21.
All right, two more conference championships from the Power Four, both at 5 o'clock. The first one here on ABC. It is the ACC championship game. The Clemson Tigers taking on the SMU Mustangs. That one will kick off in Charlotte. SMU right now in the college football playoff as the number 3 seed, but they are ranked 8th in the country. They hold that ACC lead, so they represent the ACC champion as of right now. They would be the 3 seed, and looking at the bracket here in the college football playoff, would get the winner of Alabama and Notre Dame. They are favored against Clemson by 2.5. The over-under is 55.5, and I heard an interesting scenario here, Jack, is that Clemson with a win could potentially push Alabama out of the playoff. So I'm sure Alabama is rooting for SMU in this game so that pretty much the field in the bracket stays the same. So I'm going to take SMU. I think they're going to handle Clemson. Taking a look to see if they did in fact play each other this season. I don't believe they did, but Clemson, of course, has 3 losses on the year in the conference. Taking a look at who Clemson has played. Clemson is ranked 17th in the country, 9-3, with losses against Georgia, Louisville, and South Carolina. And also taking a look at SMU to see who they have played as well. They are number 8 in the country. They are number 3 in the playoff seeding. Their only loss this year came against BYU, so they are 11-1. I'm going to take SMU. It's going to be a close game, but give me the Mustangs over under 55.5. God, I've been picking a lot of unders today. I'm gonna go over in this one. I think it's gonna be somewhat high scoring. I think it's just barely gonna be over that 55.5 point over under mark.
Okay, I'll go final score 38-32. I'll say SMU wins by 2 field goals. The over hits.
All right, man. We have a lot of similar picks so far. In terms of teams, the only one that we've picked against each other is I have Louisville, or sorry, not Louisville. I have Louisiana, and you have Marshall in the Sun Belt, so that might be the tiebreaker. Although I do believe we are probably going to pick opposite teams in this final matchup because you know what it is, Jack. It's the Big Ten Championship. 5 o'clock, CBS, the number 1 team in the nation, the only unbeaten team in college football, your Oregon Ducks. They're going to be going up against the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State right now is the 5 seed in the playoff. They would host Arizona State if the bracket holds right now. They are 11-1. Of course, their only loss this year coming to Ohio State. They are number 3 in the CFP rankings, but not seeding, just because of how all that works. Penn State is favored by 1 million points here. No, I'm kidding.
About 2 million.
No. Oregon, I have as a 3.5 point favorite from Indianapolis. Over under 49.5. I believe that both teams have strong offenses. This is going to be a high scoring game. I definitely think the over is going to hit on this one, but give me Penn State and give me the over.
You're so sick. What's your final score prediction for how much do you think Penn State's going to win by?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do believe it's going to be a close game. You got to remember, Oregon struggled in their first 2 games of the season. They barely beat Idaho and they barely beat Boise State. But then they kind of came out of the gate and never looked back as they defeated Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State, and everyone else. Penn State and Oregon have not met this season. Looking back at the history, I was going to look up the history between Penn State and Oregon because I believe they have only played each other just a few times. Of course, this is Oregon's first year in the Big Ten. Penn State, of course, returning to the Big Ten championship game after quite a few years of exodus because it was Iowa against Michigan last year. I'm not exactly sure when the last time Penn State was in the championship game. They weren't even supposed to be in the Big Ten championship game because nobody thought Michigan would defeat Ohio State because, you know, a lot of people were just thinking it was going to be that rematch between the Ducks and the Buckeyes. But here we are, Jack, with Penn State taking on Oregon. I'm going to say Penn State wins this by a final. Oh, boy. I'm going to say Penn State wins 44-37. They win by a touchdown. And they win it late. It's going to be close throughout the entire game. The Nittany Lions are pretty much going to have the ball down to the final seconds, and they're going to score that game-winning touchdown and defeat Oregon, push them out of the top 4 for the bye, and make Oregon play another home game at Autzen in the first round of the playoff. What say you, Jack?
Hey, in your dreams, buddy. I'm actually in Eugene right now for my buddy Jason's birthday. Shout out J Money. His 23rd birthday was yesterday, so I'm actually here hanging with some friends right now. But yeah, I'm in Eugene. You know how it is. Got to stick with my Ducks. I'm an Oregon alum. You know what? I got Ducks by 14. People are going to think that's a shocker because they're only favored by, 3.5? But I think that after that tremendous performance against Washington, you have to give a lot of credit to Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Winning by 28 at home is a really big statement win. And I think my original prediction was something like 44-17. I think I said Oregon was going to win that game by like 27 around there, and they won 49 to I think 21. So I was close on that. But I'll say Oregon beats Penn State with the finals. The over's got to hit. You know, it's going to be two really talented offenses. I'll say Oregon wins. Let's go. It's going to be tough. Let's go 38-28. Or actually 38-24. Oregon wins by 14. It's going to be a high-scoring affair, but I got to take Oregon.
All right, well, How shocking is that? You're going with the Ducks,
That's
but
just
you're
I
also
should just take this off, and nobody will be able to guess that.
There you go, no. All right, so just recapping. Starting back up top, Conference USA, Western Kentucky versus Jacksonville State. We both have Jacksonville State covering the 4-point spread. I have the over 57.5. You have the under 57.5. So if Jacksonville State wins that game, it'll come down to whether what the final score is to see who gets that one right. American Athletic Championship. We both have Army plus the 5 against Tulane. I have the under 45.5. You have the over. So once again, it doesn't really matter who wins that game because we have the same team. It'll just come down to how many points are scored to break our tie. Mountain West Championship, we both have Boise State and the over. Boise State once again favored by 4, over-under of 58.5. The first of the Power 4, the Big 12, we both have Arizona State minus the 2. I have the under. You have the over 50.5. So again, it'll come down to what the final score in that game is. MAC Championship, we both have Miami of Ohio minus the 1.5, and we both have the under of 44.5. There was no line I could find for the SWAC championship, but we both have Jackson State winning that one. We both have Georgia in the SEC championship, and we both have the over. Texas favored by 2.5, over-under of 49.5. Sun Belt Championship is one of the only ones we have where is one of two where we have different teams winning because I have Louisiana and the under. You have Marshall and the under. Again, Louisiana favored by 5.5, the over-under of 56.5. We both have SMU, the Mustangs, beating Clemson. They are favored by 2.5. We both have the over of 55.5 hitting. And then the final championship game of the weekend is the second one that we have a disagreement on. We do both have the over of 49.5, but I have the Nittany Lions of Penn State, and you have the Oregon Ducks. So, Jack, best of luck. We'll see who comes out with more correct picks for conference championship weekend.
I appreciate it, Jackson. Best of luck to you, too. Really looking forward to an exciting week and weekend of football.
All right, real quick, switching gears. We mentioned before just the college football playoff bracket. We'll kind of wrap up with this right here. This will just be a college football episode. But right now, if the playoffs started today, of course, we got the college football playoff rankings and the bracket projections from Tuesday. Of course, you can watch the final rankings and the selections for who makes the playoffs on Sunday morning. That one will be on ESPN with the College Football Playoff Selection Show hosted by Reese Davis. Number 1 is Oregon. They are projected as the Big Ten champion. Again, you know, we still have conference championships to be played this weekend, but I'm just going off of what they had from this last week. So Oregon, the number 1 seed, 12-0, both ranked number 1 in the rankings and seeded number 1 in the playoff, and they would have a first-round bye. Number 2 would be the Texas Longhorns, projected as the SEC champion, 11-1. Again, that only loss coming against the Georgia Bulldogs. But, Jack, that's a home loss. So, you know, the committee's probably looking at that, and especially considering what happens in this SEC championship game, Texas might move a little bit depending if they win or lose. They are ranked number 2 in the country and seeded number 2 in the playoff. SMU is number 3. They are number 8 in the rankings, but they are seeded at number 3. They are projected as the ACC champion at 11-1. Again, their only loss coming to BYU. So they would be at number 3 in the playoff and have a first-round bye. And your Mountain West Championship projection is Boise State at 11-1. They are ranked 10th in the country, but seeded number 4 in the college football playoff. They would be the final team with that first-round bye. Again, they're 11-1. Their only loss coming against Oregon. So that rounds up your top 4 with Oregon, Texas, SMU, and Boise State. Your fifth and final conference championship projection is Arizona State at 10-2. But they would be seeded as number 12. They are 15th in the country. And Jack, if the results hold, and this would be the bracket where we would begin the college football playoff, Arizona State's first round matchup would be in Happy Valley, taking on the number 5 seed in the playoffs and the number 3 seed in the country, 11-1, Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Arizona State and Penn State played, it would be close, but I think I'd have to take Penn State.
The winner of that one would get Boise State. The number 6 team in the country is Notre Dame at 11-1. Again, Jack, their only loss coming against NIU at home. That non-conference early season loss where they paid NIU over $1 million to come play them, and they ended up losing. So
it's embarrassing.
Notre Dame would still host a playoff game in the first round down in South Bend, and Jack, this might be the best one of the 4. They would be hosting Kalen DeBoer in Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, what is it, Notre Dame against Alabama if that happened?
It would be 9-3 Alabama, who is ranked 11th in the nation and seeded number 11 in the playoff.
Yeah, I think if those two teams match up, I would take Alabama by something like 10. I mean, Alabama's kind of had an underwhelming season, even though it's DeBoer's first year at the helm after coaching at Washington. But I'll say Alabama wins the one by 10. What's your take? If that game happens.
Well, if that game happens, I'm going to say Notre Dame because
Really?
Alabama's from the South. They're not used to playing in snow, and you could have some snow in South Bend in late December because I think the college football playoff begins on December 20th. But I'm going to take Notre Dame. It's going to be a close game. I think they win by maybe a field goal, or it's going to be a one-possession game. I'll say Notre Dame wins that game 34-31. The winner of that Notre Dame and Alabama game would get SMU, by the way, in round 2. Number 7 team in the playoff is number 5 in the country. That is the Georgia Bulldogs at 10-2 right now. They would host the first round playoff in Athens. They would be taking on the number 9 team in the country, but the number 10 seeded Indiana Hoosiers. They are 11-1, and again, Indiana's loss is against Ohio State. So it would be Georgia taking on Indiana in Athens. Winner of that one would go to play Texas.
Jeez. So it would be Texas against 2?
It would be Texas against the winner of Georgia and Indiana. So if Georgia wins that game against Indiana, you could potentially have Georgia and Texas 3 times this season.
Georgia and Texas, that'll be another interesting matchup. I think I'd have to rock with Georgia just because their defense is a lot better and they have a lot more, experience coaching wise. Like Kirby Smart's just gone a lot further, and he's always got really talented players. So I'll take Georgia.
All right, and the final matchup of round 1, it is the 8-9 matchup. You have the number 6 team in the nation, but number 8 seeded in the college football playoff, the Buckeyes from Ohio State. 2 losses against Oregon and Michigan. They would be taking on the number 7 seed, or the number 7 team in the nation, number 9 in the playoff, the Tennessee Volunteers at 10-2. So Buckeyes against Volunteers, winner to play the Ducks.
I think you got to take Ohio State here. I mean, Tennessee, they've had a pretty solid season, but Ohio State with just 2 losses. No one really expected them to lose against Michigan, so that one was pretty shocking to me. Obviously, as a Ducks fan, I thought Oregon was going to win that game by, I think, maybe 3 points. They ended up winning by 1. I'll say if that game hypothetically happens, I'll say Buckeyes take it by 10 points. Let's go 34-24. What's your take?
Well, Tennessee's 2 losses are against Arkansas and against Georgia, so not terrible losses, although I would kind of argue maybe that Arkansas loss is because Arkansas is not in the field. Georgia is. So that Georgia loss is not bad. Of course, Tennessee went unbeaten at home this year. They are 10-2, so I would have to rock with Tennessee going into that game with a lot of confidence. My sister now lives in Tennessee, but she doesn't live near the University of Tennessee, so I feel comfortable saying this. Give me the Buckeyes of Ohio State. They're going to avenge themselves from a loss. Of course, that game would be in Columbus, so Ohio State would be hosting Tennessee. Columbus is kind of a difficult place to play college football. But of course, Michigan went there last weekend and put up 13 points and still won. So anything's possible. But I'm still rocking with Ohio State. Give me Ohio State here in a relatively, big win. I don't think it's going to be much of a blowout, but I do believe Ohio State wins by at least 3 scores.
Wow.
I'm going to say
really, that would be the hottest take of the day.
I'm going to say Ohio State wins 45-14.
Wow. Okay, I think I said something like 34 or 24. Yeah, I'll rock with that. I'm winning by 10. That could very well happen. But you know what? We haven't had a segment full of hot takes, so I like that you're sprinkling in a little bit of those hot takes. Jackson got to switch it up a little bit. Jackson's got Ohio State by at least 3 scores. Okay, let's go to the next one here.
Well, that rounds out the 12-team college football playoff. First-round matchups right now would be Arizona State against Penn State in Happy Valley, Tennessee against Ohio State in Columbus, Alabama against Notre Dame in South Bend, and Indiana against Georgia in Athens. Arizona and Penn State, the winner would go to play Boise. Tennessee and Ohio State, the winner would go to play Oregon. Alabama and Notre Dame's winner would go to play SMU. And Texas would get the winner of Georgia and Indiana. Jack, as we wrap up things here on this episode dedicated solely to the conference championship games this weekend and just, college football in general, as we are coming down the stretch, getting closer and closer to the college football playoff beginning. Of the games this weekend, I want you to try to be as not, biased as you are, because I know probably one game you're looking forward to in particular. But is there any other game this weekend that really stands out to you of, team's performance, or what game you believe could be an upset?
I think that the Georgia one has to be an upset. It won't be that big of an upset because Texas is favored by what? You said 2.5 points or 3.5, something like that.
Yeah. So it's pretty much a pick 'em in that game.
Yeah, I'll say the one I'm looking forward to the most is going to be Georgia and Texas, just because you got two really good defenses, and like offense wise, they're okay. I mean, Quinn Ewers is fun to watch. I mean, Georgia, they always have a really good defense. So I'll say the game I'm looking forward to the most is going to be Georgia against Texas, and this number 2 is definitely going to be Oregon against Penn State. So I'll say both those games are going to be really good and close. But I think that the biggest upset is probably just going to be Georgia beating Texas by at least 10 or more, whatever I said. But yeah, what do you think?
I have 3 games I'm going to be very invested in, and I can watch them all because they're all at different times. First up on Friday, I think the Mountain West Championship is going to be very entertaining between UNLV and Boise State.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Of course, Boise definitely, with a win, helps them in the college football playoff. It would keep them probably at the number 4 seed. And if we have any, other upsets in the field, Boise State could potentially move up to a 3 seed. Who knows?
Possible.
But I'm really looking forward to that game Friday night. Like you, I'm also looking forward to the SEC championship game between Georgia and Texas. Watching that game from just a few weeks ago down in Austin, that was unexpected. I was not expecting. I mean, I had a hunch Georgia would win, but I didn't think Georgia would double Texas up and win 30-15. But I'm really looking forward to that SEC championship game Saturday afternoon, and then I'm somewhat actually looking forward to the ACC championship game. I think Clemson and SMU is going to be a good game as well. Of course, I say that because, like I said earlier, Clemson with a win could potentially push Alabama out of the playoff field. So definitely going to have to be keeping an eye on that game. But those are just 3 that I'm kind of looking forward to the most this weekend, Jack.
Yeah, that's valid. And one last thing before we wrap up for today, let's just give, I think that everybody knows what I'm going to say, but let's just give a way too early college football final prediction and your champion.
You mean like who will win? In
the college football playoffs, who's going to take it all, and what is the final matchup going to be? What's the championship game? Who are those 2 teams that are going to be in the championship game?
That's a good question. Because looking at the bracket right now, you could not have Ohio State against Oregon because they'd play each other in the second round. But of course, there will probably be a new bracket on Sunday. And Jack, when we come back again, next week or whenever we record again, we'll have to do first round predictions once we know the matchup set in stone and see where everyone is. But right now, this is going to be close. You know what? Give me Georgia as one of the teams in the championship game. They are relatively upset that they were left out of the playoff last year. Of course, last year was it being the final year of it being 4 teams.
Now it's 12.
Yeah, and of course, nobody could be as upset as Florida State going unbeaten.
That was just brutal.
Unbeaten, winning their conference and being left out at number 5 just so Texas and Alabama could get in. But not only Florida State, but Georgia too. Georgia went undefeated all year. The only game they lost was the SEC championship to Alabama, and that was enough to kick them out of the playoffs. So I think Georgia's going to make a statement. Of course, Florida State's not because they went 2-10 this year. But give me Georgia as one of the teams, and from the top of the bracket, this is going to be close. You know what? Give me a rematch of the semifinal from 2 years ago. I believe it was was it the Peach Bowl maybe? Give me that rematch. Georgia against Ohio State. I think after the loss to Michigan, the Buckeyes, they're going to make a run here in the playoff. Of course, they're a tough team to play. Only two losses on the year. One against their bitter rival in Michigan, and one to the refs that helped Oregon win that game back in October. But give me Ohio State against Georgia in the 2024 College Football National Championship.
And who do you got winning it all, Georgia or the Buckeyes?
Bulldogs. Georgia. Georgia is going to win it.
Okay, valid take. I think everyone knows what I'm going to say here. My way too early champion has to be Oregon. I mean, they've had a tremendous season. I think that there's no way they lose to – if they're healthy, there's no way they lose to Ohio State. I mean, that game's going to be really close, but I'll say Oregon wins the one by like 7. I got to go Georgia and Oregon. I think that this could be the year that Oregon gets their, if I'm not mistaken, their first ever. I think they might have. I don't think they have any football championships in their history, but they have like maybe a basketball one.
No, they don't have any football championships.
So last year could have been Oregon's year, but they lost to Washington twice. I think it was the Pac-12 championship and in the regular season. That was tough as a Bucs fan, but
that was amazing. Oregon, I loved both those games.
Yeah. I'll say Oregon wins in the Natty against Georgia by like 7 points or even 3. It could come down to a field goal. It'll be close, but I'll say by 7 because Georgia and Oregon both have really good defenses, but I think this Oregon offense is on a tear right now. I mean, they put up 49 against Washington. They put up 33 against Ohio State. That game was close. I mean, after they had those 2 losses earlier in the season, like you said, they've turned it around. But so I appreciate you for having me on, Jackson, and we've had some hot takes here.
Jack, I just want to remind you, Oregon, the last time they played Georgia, only put up 3 points and lost 49-3. But, of course, that was a few years ago. Different rosters, different teams now.
Different coach.
Yeah. But interesting. Oregon against Georgia. Well, we both have Georgia because I got Georgia against Ohio State. And I want to ask you real quick, Jack, how far do you think the Broncos can go? Do you think the Broncos can win their first game in the playoff if they get there? I mean, they would have a first-round bye. As it looks right now, they would – I mean, it would be a neutral – only the first-round games are on campus, so it would be a neutral site game for Boise State. Looking at it right now, they'd get the winner of Penn State and Arizona State. But do you think the Broncos have a chance to maybe at least win a game or go far in the playoff?
I think the Broncos are a sleeper team to win it all this year. I mean, if I looked at the betting odds, I'm sure, the Broncos are something like plus 500 to win it or plus 600, something like that. I think that they very well could beat Penn State just because Ashton Jeanty is a monster and they have a pretty solid offense. I mean, if you look at this Boise State team, they only lost to Oregon by a field goal or by 2 points, something like that. And overall, what does Boise State have? Like 2 losses this season?
They only have 1 loss to Oregon.
Yeah, it's just 1 loss. So
it was a 3-point loss. They only lost to Oregon by 3.
I'll say Boise State is a sleeper team. They're definitely gonna, make some noise in the game against Penn State, and if that's the way that it plays out. But I'll say, Boise State's definitely a sleeper team.
Yeah, I just know a lot of people are not giving a whole lot of love to Boise State, especially even if they win the Mountain West Championship on Friday, just because, they come from such a, lesser conference than the Power Four, like the Big Ten, ACC,
Right.
Big 12, SEC. But I think the Broncos, they have a chance, I think assuming Penn State wins against Arizona State, if that is indeed the matchup, like you said, I think the Broncos have a great chance to beat Penn State. But then, of course, it would be Boise State against Oregon, that rematch from the second game of the season. But that would be in the semifinals. That would not be in Eugene. That would be in a neutral site. I believe the two semifinals this year are the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl. So they would be playing in one of those if they indeed win after getting the bye. But, I'm kind of somewhat rooting for Boise State. I want them to, make a run this year. So I definitely am not rooting for Oregon. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not rooting for the stupid Ducks. But I do believe that Oregon is going to make it pretty far as well. I do believe that they won't win the Big Ten championship, so they will have to host a first-round game on campus. But they'll easily win that one against whoever they have to play, and then they will probably win their second-round game as well and make it to the semifinals. But they might. That's, I think, where their season comes to an end with a loss against either Ohio State or, I don't know, like a Penn State or something like that with like a rematch. But I'm going to say Georgia against Ohio State, national champion, Georgia Bulldogs. And Jack, you have the Oregon Ducks against Georgia, and you have Oregon defeating Georgia in the 2024 Natty.
Yeah, that's my way too early prediction, but we'll see how it pans out, Jackson.
All right, Jack. Well, that will do it for this episode. Just we talked a lot of college football, gave our predictions. I'll post our picks on my Instagram page if you want to go follow at HamPDX. Jack is on Instagram as well. It's your name, right?
At Jack MacArthur 10, at Jack MCARTHUR 10. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in.
Well, Jack, thanks for hopping back on. It was fun to be live with you last week, but it's always fun to see your face on my computer.
Yes, sir. It's always fun to see your face, even though you're a Beavers fan. You don't have to put up with it. But you know what? I'm used to putting up with it. I've known this guy for over like 10 years. So you know what? Cheers, and we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Wow, that was uncalled for right towards the end of the episode. Well, we got conference championship games this weekend, so be sure to watch a lot of college football this weekend, and we'll be back at some point to give our predictions for the college football playoff round 1 series. Jack, thanks very much for joining, and we'll see you again down the road.
All right, thanks again. See you guys later.